So it's natural that the NRO has been watching the AFRENIC situation very closely for some years, in fact, because AFRENIC has needed some support, and because, like many others, actually, we've seen the situation at AFRENIC to be a risk to the organisation, and therefore, as I said, a risk to any RIR is a risk to the RIR system and to the global internet numbers registry. The thing is, though, that the NRO is built on an assumption of complete autonomy of each of the RIRs. Every RIR is a bottom-up membership-based organisation that's in charge of its own destiny, and there's never been a power invested in the NRO or anyone else, in ICANN for that matter, to intervene in an RIR. And there hasn't been any circumstances where intervention has been required or expected at all, because RIRs are autonomous. The RIRs are expected to be able to run their affairs properly and correctly, and to do so in line with some of the basic documentation that has been established, including IETF RFCs, the NRO MOU, the document from at ICANN called ICP2, which is the conditions and expectations for the approval of new RIRs. So when, as the AFRENIC situation has been emerging over a few years, I think probably the NRO's best summation of our position, at least back in June 2020, was a statement that we made, which was an appeal to the AFRENIC community to really come together in support of AFRENIC and to help it pull through various challenges which have been happening. We also, just shortly after that, we wrote a letter in the name of the NRO to the Mauritius government to the same end. We were highlighting, in case it wasn't well known, the absolute importance of AFRENIC to the global internet and the global internet governance system. We also provided some support in that letter to AFRENIC's own request for an international status, a status that exists in Mauritius, but noting that status doesn't and didn't, and we did not ask for immunity for AFRENIC under that status. It's simply an administrative status in Mauritius. More recently, the AFRENIC board lost some members and lost the quorum that it needed to make substantial decisions. The CEO, his term expired, and he decided to step aside. And so we were really keen at that point to ensure that the daily operations, at least, of AFRENIC continued, if not the full governance of the organisation. So the NRO gave support to AFRENIC in various ways, and I really can't stress enough how incredibly impressed we've been, as we all should be, by the resilience of AFRENIC staff. These have been trying circumstances, and I think we all in the RIR community, and I hope in the African community, really owe a huge debt to the AFRENIC staff for the dedication that they've shown in keeping things running under the circumstances for quite some time now. We, during the last year, and understanding that the board needed to be reconstituted, we always understood that the Mauritian government or the Mauritian court had the power to direct that elections be held so that AFRENIC could resume its proper governance. We actually didn't know what the specific legal mechanism was for that to happen, and there were various appeals to the court for the court to take action and make this happen. But finally, now that path is clear, with the appointment of the official receiver to AFRENIC, and so that's a really important step, and it's one that we have welcomed with a public statement from the NRO. ICANN has also welcomed that in the same way. Because, of course, the receiver has a specific mission, and in most cases, receivers, as you probably know, receivers have the task of liquidating or winding up organisations, but that's not the case for AFRENIC. The receiver is specifically asked to maintain and to protect AFRENIC's assets and its operations. That's part of his duty, and also to ensure that an AFRENIC board election happens and the CEO can be appointed within 6 months. So this is the solution that's come from the Mauritian system. It's the solution that's now in place and it's immediately available. I don't know if there are any other alternatives to that, but it's the solution that we have. So I think the NRO and ICANN, I mean, we're very clear in welcoming this as the solution that's needed. There's been some misunderstanding, even a bit of opposition to that appointment, some questions raised, but honestly, I think there's no need to level accusations at anyone under the circumstances. One issue was the presence in the first place of an advisor to the receiver who was actually involved with litigation, and that was immediately reversed, and we have to assume that that was a genuine situation which was recognised and fixed at the time. So I really think there's no point in revisiting that or levelling sort of accusations or suspicion. But we're going to hear from the receiver himself very shortly. He may be ready now. But finally, I just want to say again how invaluable have been the efforts of Afrinic staff. They've kept the organisation running without having a leader. They really deserve the highest praise for that. They also deserve, honestly, to be relieved of the uncertainty that has been over their own positions, the positions of themselves and their families for quite some time, and to achieve that as soon as possible. So I'd only ask Afrinic staff who are watching to please have a little more patience in the coming months to allow the process to continue and to succeed. And from the NRO point of view, and also I think I can say from what I know of the wider technical community, IETF and ICANN and Internet Society, that the RIR system is fundamental to the health of the global internet. And that system includes Afrinic, and the eyes of the world, as I've mentioned, are on you, on Afrinic, on all of us to return Afrinic to stable and improved operations as soon as we possibly can. So with that, I hope that the official receiver of Mauritius, Mr. Vasudevan Veerasamy, is available, and I really do ask you to afford him all due respect for his position and his role. It seems we won't have time for questions. He has a short window, but let's see if Mr. Veerasamy is available. Can we hand over to him now? Thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vasudevan Veerasamy, the official receiver of Mauritius. I am the appointed receiver of Afrinic, African Network Information Center Limited, a company incorporated in Mauritius and the laws of Mauritius. In virtue of a court order issued on the 12th of September 2023, the Honorable Judge sitting at the Bankruptcy Division of the Supreme Court of Mauritius has appointed me as a receiver of Afrinic with powers that I have already sent it to John Crane, Mr. John Crane, so that he can forward it to you. My role is to organize the election, to appoint a CEO, and to look that the asset of the company remain stable. There is a specific role that I am playing, and I will have to follow the court order, and my appointment is by the court, and I have to go according to the court order and what is mentioned in the powers and duties conferred to me as a receiver. I'm a government employee. I'll do my job without fear and favor, and for the integrity of Afrinic, especially toward the employees who have been working without a CEO for a long time. And we have to recognize the role played by the staff of Afrinic, that it was not easy maybe for them to carry on a company without a CEO, and they have done it. That we have to say is a great thank for them. The whole Africa and Indian Ocean has to say is great thank you to all the staff for the role they have been doing. They have carried out the duties without a CEO. And now there's a receiver. Everything is going as should be. Nothing has changed. I am in company now itself. I'm in company of 3 senior staff, the HR, the finance manager, the senior technical officer, and they are here. They are helping me. They are giving me a good hand. So what I need is that each and every organization that think that he can give me a helping hand is welcome. You have my email address. You have my address. You can contact the staff of Afrinic. They will forward it to me. If anything you have to say positive and positive help, you are welcome. And I think I have to mention it that the election will be a fair and free election. I rest assured that I have been participating in many elections in Mauritius. I have been appointed returning officer in many elections in Mauritius. And my knowledge of election, I am not just boasting it, but I have a good knowledge of how to conduct an election. And you know, the Mauritius election, the election in Mauritius are fair and free and democratic in a democratic way. So I assure you today, all those who are witnessing my speech, that the election will be free and fair without bias. I don't have the right to be biased. And I think I will not be influenced. I give you my word today that I will not be influenced by anybody, any organization. I will do my work as it should be, as assigned by the code. Today I am in front of you. I am in front of all the people in Africa listening and watching to me. Maybe they did not know that what the role of the official receiver. The official receiver is an employee of the Ministry of Finance. And I am actually doing more than 50 liquidation. I am in charge of all the bankrupts in Mauritius. So have faith and confidence in me that the job assigned to me by the court will be done in a free and fair manner without fear and favor. And that's all I have to say to you. I wish all the participants a good day, and a lot of things will come out from your summit, and I wish the summit good success, and God bless you all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. Very nice to see Ghislaine there. That really is the main topic that I felt we needed to address here at the in this NRO session. Unfortunately, Mr. Virasamy hasn't had time to take questions, but if there are any questions, any discussion in relation to the NRO in particular, I'd be very happy to try and answer those here in my capacity. We do have, I think, a community forum about Afrinic that's coming up on Friday as well. So there'll obviously be plenty more time to discuss these matters. But would you have a microphone switched on over here, please? Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. And my name is Akinori Maemura from Japan Network Information Center, JPNIC. I am a member of the APNIC, which is the Asia Pacific the internet registry. And then I'm here for no assignment of the appearance, a presentation, or some function for this community, but I came here for observing the activity of the community in this continent for the current situation with quite difficulty with AFRINIC. And then I'm really happy to see the community member here in Africa is working hard with quite huge solidarity and the ties among the community members to get that right. Then it was great to see Mr. Receiver's face and the statement. It is really fair and really of the commitment. And then one of my concerns is how the receivership should be conducted, will be conducted in AFRINIC, but I believe by his statement, which is very steady and then promising. And if the Mr. Receiver still listen to us, then I'd like to share my mind that as Paul Wilson said in his statement, the sustainable operations of the regional internet registries is crucial for the maintaining the internet, the healthy operation. Then it is not, of course, AFRINIC is serving for the African community, and it is really important for the African community to have the AFRINIC working properly. But at the same time, this is a really crucial part of the operational institutional mechanism of the global internet. And then with that sense, I am a member of the APNIC, which is covering the Japan, but still have the great concern and the great expectation of the AFRINICs getting back to the normal operation, and really expect the things go smoothly under the great supervision of the Mr. Receiver. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akinori. Are there any other questions or observations, comments?
Hi, it's Paul Huell. I'm the director of Crystal Web, so you all know exactly who I am. I have one very simple question for the NRO. Would the NRO support the proposition that no person should be eligible to stand for election to the AFRINIC board if they are facing criminal charges in any jurisdiction?
I don't think I could speak for the NRO on that, but it sounds like a reasonable proposition to me, speaking personally. The RIR system is established, but it's still young, and there is ongoing evolution happening. If I could just say a couple of words about APNIC, we did recently undertake some changes to APNIC bylaws that precisely address the kind of issue that Paul raised there about the qualifications and expectations of nominees to the EC. So that was actually a set of propositions put to the membership, and the APNIC membership was able to make that decision as to the suitability of, or the criteria that define the suitability of candidates. And I'm honestly not sure exactly where AFRINIC is in terms of that kind of discussion in the bylaws, but it seems to be a normal kind of discussion in the course of evolution of these organizations. Are there any other questions or remarks? Because my purpose here was to cover this this particular topic, and as I said, there's another session about AFRINIC on Friday. If not, then I might ask the next speaker, Saul, if he's ready for a presentation from the Address Council, I think. And if anyone, we've got the morning here for this series of NRO presentations. They include the Internet Number Resource Status Report and the Address Council updates from Saul. We've got Kevin Swift from LACNIC to talk about the RARs and beyond registry services, and then IPv6 with Oscar. So we've got quite a few RAR presentations here. If questions occur on any of these topics to any of you during the course of the morning, then please feel free to use the microphone. But for now, Saul, thanks.
Morning, everybody. I'm here to present the Internet Resource Status Report. I'm going to try and make this a little bit more interesting and not do a death by PowerPoint presentation. I think the numbers are going to speak for themselves. We can all read the slides, but there's just a few points that I'd like to raise about them. To show some interesting things that could come out of the sessions. So here we can see the allocation of the 256/8 that have been allocated to all the entities. The central registry obviously is the legacy space. And we can see quite clearly who's got the majority of the lion's share of address space: APNIC, RIPE, ARIN, and then of course LACNIC and AFRINIC. The smaller RRs with less space, obviously. Yeah, we can just see clearly how much space is managed by each RR. Nothing overly exciting there. And what was more interesting is what's left and who has space left in the pool. AFRINIC and APNIC still having some space. APNIC having quite a bit of space, actually more than AFRINIC. And this little chart later on in a slide later on, where AFRINIC doesn't, all the other RRs have inter-transfer policies. AFRINIC doesn't, and yet we still have less space than APNIC, which I suppose is a relation to how much was received in the beginning. IPv4 space issued by all the RRRs. This you'll see later on, and please remember the slide for a few slides' time, because you'll see in 2019 there seems to be a big rush for space. The IPv6 stats reflect the same for 2019. There also was a bit of a rush, maybe a COVID spike of everyone trying to get some space quickly before things shut down. Who knows? But it certainly does taper off as the years go by. 2023, I know we're only halfway through. Well, actually 3/4 of the way through, but it's a lot less space than in the previous years, and pales in comparison to 2019. IPv4 transfers, excluding mergers and acquisitions. RIPE leading the way, followed by ARIN, APNIC, and then LACNIC, with AFRINIC doing 0. But again, we'll see RIPE in the transfer region for the next few slides as well, doing quite a few transfers. And again, this excludes people taking over other companies, merging and acquiring other companies. So it's people it's entities with space that they're not using, transferring, selling, whatever, no judgments between different entities. So they were saying in last year only, and there you can see over the last couple of years, again, 2019, RIPE leading the way by significantly in the number of intra-transfers, almost 3,500 in 2021, and coming off very, very small compared to APNIC and LACNIC. Inter-RR v4 transfers, as we've mentioned earlier on, AFRINIC not having a policy, so that explains why they're all zeros. And we can see the LACNIC also has a bit of a small amount, but the other, sorry, APNIC having a rather small amount of 1, and then the other RRs taking the lion's share. V6, this is just an interesting. It's interesting to see. We've always heard there's just so much V6 space, and if you look at that first circle of the /0, and how much of that is the global unicast /3 of the total pool, of how much has actually been allocated, it is so small, and there's just so much space left. If you look at how much has been allocated to the RRs, it's a fairly equal. Okay, ARIN's got a lot more than than Afrinic and APNIC, for example, and LACNIC. But it's still, it's not that, if you compare this to the V4 pool, the share of V6 space is a lot more equitable amongst the IRRs. V6 allocations by RRR. Again, 2019, remember I asked you to keep that the V4 slide in mind. The 2019, again, that big rush with RIPE, again, leading the way of everybody throughout the last 4 years. It's nice to see the other Afrinic showing some, getting some screen space here, and APNIC also doing quite well. Interesting, 2021, 2022, the LACNIC, APNIC, and AREN actually almost similar in their allocations of V6 space. Obviously, this isn't a percentage, so which skews things, but it's because AREN's obviously a much bigger region, and the fact that they're doing this more or less the same as LACNIC and APNIC, that just shows what's going on in the markets. Allocated space, the slash 22 is allocated by each RRR. Again, as what we've seen, RIPE just leading the way significantly, almost double what the next competitor of APNIC has done, and LACNIC and Afrinic, no surprise, smaller markets, a lot less. V6 assignments over the last few years, again, you can see, now we see something very, very different. Now we see APNIC leading the way. It's not the task for this presentation, but interesting to see what market factors contributed to these kind of stats and surge in the requirements of V6 space. And it's great to see V6 space just being adopted in such a way, and especially from an RRR of APNIC that actually still has V4 spaces available. So people aren't rushing for V4 space; they're actually taking a lot of V6 space, which is really encouraging. V4 space and V6 space in the slash 48 assigned, obviously a much smaller, probably for PRR space. Afrinic, again, the quite low in the mark, but here we don't see it RIPE. You know, all the other slides we've seen, RIPE's been the big graph, and now we see everyone else taking over. LACNIC and RIPE have kind of swapped places in this one, so it's interesting to see that. But again, I suppose different markets, different kind of industries in the region. This is a more meaningful graph in my view. It shows us the percentage of members with V4 and V6 versus V6 only, and we're seeing a large number of people with V6 only, which is quite encouraging. And they're obviously running a successful network, and their users aren't being isolated from the rest of the internet, so things are clearly working for them. It's encouraging. We've got AREN has got 9.5% of their membership only has V6. That's quite something. I don't know what we don't know. Unfortunately, stats are wonderful things. 93.85% of them are made up. But no, seriously, what we don't know is that for test usage, is that for experimental stuff? What are they doing with it? But if it's business use, it's really great to see. And then a LACNIC with 4%, 4.2, and coming down to Afrinic, which is 0.5% with V6 only. ACE numbers. This is really some interesting information, and really just geek numbers. So we've got the majority of ACE numbers actually, and 32-bit stuff is unassigned still. And we can see here that of the assigned stuff, it's pretty much a sort of RIPE 50-50, well, just less than 50 for 16-bit versus 32-bit. AREN, it makes sense. I've got a lot more 16 than 32-bit numbers. LACNIC, Afrinic, and LACNIC, of course, the newer registries, far more 32-bit ACE numbers allocated than 16. Same for Afrinic, and APNIC as well. So far more 32 than 16s. Interesting slide, this one. I'm curious again. Sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions, but these stats always do create questions. We don't always have the answers, but sometimes asking the questions is also half the interest. Is why are we still issuing so many 16-bit ASN numbers? If you look at AREN, and I mean, it's 500 16-bit versus 48 32 bits. It should be the other way around, one would think. RIPE as well. Okay, their proportion is correct, but still 220 approximately versus almost 1,000. These are high numbers of 16-bit access. So you would think that modern day equipment would all be running off 32 bits. I'm curious to see, and if anyone knows from the regions why, I'd be very curious to hear, because that really did, when I was looking at these stats, it really did pique my interest. Here we can see the history of over the years, and yeah, it's interesting because it wasn't always like that. And you know, we can see in 2021 again, AppNIC really up there, tying in with the previous few slides where they had a great spike in the internet, in the IP address space allocations. So obviously a lot of probably will show interesting. If you tell you that, I'm guessing to the membership, it would probably show a corollary of information there. But again, interesting between 32-bit and 16-bit numbers. Total ASN signed by each RRR. You know, RIPE's got almost a 50-50 split there. Erin is a lot more 16-bit, as we saw, but we saw this in the pie chart as well, so it's nothing new. And AfriNIC. Okay. And AfriNIC, again, no surprise, more 32-bit than the 16-bit, being the newer kid on the block. And I say newer kid on the block in relation to people like Erin. Thank you. That's it. Any questions?
Hi, Saul. I first want to ask your opening remark about I'll let the numbers speak for themselves. Was that an intentional pun on the number resource organization? There's one thing that I'm sort of picking up that I didn't see in the data, and I'm wondering if it's a case of it's just, you know, extraneous data, or if the data isn't available. But do we have any indication of LIRs which are transferring their IPv6 resources out, or, you know, disposing of their IP6, you know, resources by way of transfer to a different region and remaining as an IPv6 only provider? So, you know, a firm that's in AppNIC that, you know, does an inter-transfer of their IPv4 resources and just focuses. I mean, the reason I'm interested is because of IPv6 transition, but I'm just wondering if that data does possibly exist, or if it's going to be a nightmare to try and figure out. It
probably does exist. It'd be a nightmare to get. I think the result is a slide we showed where we had v6 only members. But now I think it's a lot of extra data to decide, like, how do you know if someone's gotten rid of their space? You'd have to look at years. You'd have to analyze each year and say, we had these members today that v4 and v6 space. This year we had these members v4 and 6, and see when, if and when. I think that's beyond the scope of these stats.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was asking, you know, does it exist, or is it extraneous?
I think it's an interesting question, but I think probably the analytics is probably not worth it. But as I said earlier, questions are interesting.
Yeah,
we don't always have the answers, but
a related stat that, you know, again would sort of come up is, are we able to ascertain the growth in the number of IPv6 only members at a given resource, or is that time data also going to be a bit of an analytical challenge to pick up?
I think you could probably interpolate that from the slides. If you take over the last, you know, if you look at the slides we had, if you take the last 4 years,
4 years, yeah,
you look at the growth.
Okay.
I think what could be interesting to add to these slides is perhaps a membership growth.
Yeah,
that would probably be quite an interesting thing to see, because then I think that's your question. Because then you're seeing, is the growth in allocations related to the number of memberships? And I think I mentioned that in AppNIC. I said, what happened?
It's a great growth. I mean, that's the reason why I'm sort of thinking.
I think that's your question.
Wondering the background.
It would be an interesting thing to overlay these into the membership numbers and the membership growth of the RRR as well.
Yeah.
It hasn't been done. I don't know if there's.
I'm not volunteering.
I don't know if there's a reason for it. Hasn't been thought of, possibly, but that could be an interesting thing, because that would explain, and that kind of answers your question.
Yeah.
Is the growth because more people are taking up the resources, or they have more members and therefore more people taking up the resources?
Great. Thanks so much, Saul.
Hooray.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Bonjour à tout le monde. Hervé Clément from Orange. So thank you very much, Saul, for your presentation. And it's very useful to have these figures so presented so regularly to the community. My question is related to IPv6 as well, just perhaps a naive question. So you show the percentage of members being allocated by IPv6 in each of the regions. So there are different percentage considering the region. I don't think you have the answer, but do you think that one of the reasons of the percentage could be linked to the policies in force in each region? For instance, could be policy telling that if you want additional IPv4, you must have IPv6 before, etc. Just a naive question.
I would certainly encourage a kind of policy like that. And I would certainly encourage that they actually not just have it, but you actually have to use it.
Yeah.
Even if
Exactly.
Even if it's just on that machine that goes ping. But I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it probably is partially that. And I think partially because people are starting to use it.
Yeah, that's a general question we have. So as you imagine, generally, because so we all advocate for the adoption of IPv6, etc. And the idea is encourage members to adopt and use IPv6, of course.
I think an important, again, coming back to Paul's questions, the stats are wonderful things. We always can ask so many more questions. How much of that space is announced? I think would also be very interesting.
Yeah.
It's all very well that we've allocated the space, but what percentage of that space is actually being announced in the global routing tables? I think that sort of ties into your question. I think that's ultimately your question is, yes, they're taking it because they need more V4 space, but are they just taking it or they're actually doing something with it?
Yes, completely agree. Just to put that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Oscar Robles from LACNIC. Probably this may help Hervé to his question. In LACNIC, in the very early years, the community, come up with a policy to allocate IPv6 space together with the IPv4 request. So that's one of the reasons why you see this large percentage of members of LACNIC with IPv6 already, almost 97%. I'm not sure the numbers actually sum up correctly in the slide, but the thing is that really helps. That is one of the factors that helps the adoption and the deployment of IPv6. As you have seen, we have a good number of IPv6 only members with the IPv6 space allocated and no IPv4. But that's also because we have no more IPv4 space currently. So they may have IPv4 space rented from other sources or transferred without us being aware of that.
Interesting, thank you. But I think again it comes back to the question of Ray's and my comment. Maybe it's these things do need to be looked in conjunction with the routing tables. When we show the stats, maybe next year at the next one, if we I don't know the practicalities of it, but to include how much is actually being routable. We need to try and include how much space is actually routable. So has this V6 space been allocated, and how much is being announced in the global routing tables? Okay, should we move on to the ASO presentation?
I think we might have a good break in 8 minutes, so we might leave it time.
Okay, cool. All right.
We're running a little early, so the coffee break is scheduled at 10, and I've just suggested to Sol that he might handle it. We might have the next presentation after the break. So if there aren't any other questions, then with permission, I suppose we'll take a break now. Yep, got the thumbs up. Okay, so we'll be back at 10:30. Thanks, everyone. Sorry.
No encouragement for them.